Hi everyone, welcome back to The Mystic in the Woods. I'm Kate, and today we're going to be talking about card work strategies for your shadow work practice. So we're going to be going over sort of three things today. We're going to talk about a few different ways you can use your cards to assist in your shadow work. We're going to talk about the types of questions that I think are really important for us to sort of excavate, like the areas of inquiry that I think are really important for us to excavate during shadow work. And then we're also going to talk about a specific spread that I have created using those 6 areas of inquiry and a 40 question bank to create like a plug and play sort of spread. And first of all, you can get the whole thing for free on my website. Link is below. There's a PDF you can get access to with all the questions, the areas of inquiry, and the spread and everything like that. And secondly, before we get started, the reason that this is the second video in our Shadow Work and Tarot series is because I want to be able to reference spread positions as we move through the rest of this series. So along with sort of the different ways that we can use card work to assist in our shadow work practice, I've also sort of created a 6-card spread that I'm going to use throughout the duration of this series for the most part, just so that we have something we can kind of consistently reference. So if that would be, again, if that's something you would like to have a physical copy of, you can get that at my website. The link is below, totally free. Okay, so we're going to get started because we have kind of a lot to go over. Now, first I want to talk about sort of the 6 areas of inquiry that I think are really important for us to look at when we're doing shadow work. And again, I have like 40 questions in this question bank. I'm not going to be reading all of those. You can get that in the free PDF, but that would make this video very long. Now, the first area of inquiry is like the shadow piece. So what shadow piece is ready to sort of come out from the unconscious, be brought up into the light and integrated, right? What piece of us is ready to be integrated? Now, if you already know what shadow work piece you're working on, then you can also put in this category like a card to represent you in this current moment. And I think that this is really important that we start with one of these 2 things, because if you don't know where you are, it's really hard to know where you're going, right? It's really hard to create a plan to go there. So if we don't know what shadow work piece we're integrating, it's really hard to create a plan to heal and integrate that, right? So the first area of inquiry is very simple. It just has a few questions in that on the question bank. And it really is just about what shadow piece are we looking at right now? What shadow piece are we avoiding, and what is ready to be brought up into the consciousness and integrated? Now, the second area of inquiry, and I'm going to be looking at my notes so I don't skip one, is understanding the impact that this shadow piece is having on you. So by definition, the things sitting in your shadow are unconscious, right? So I have a whole video on what shadow work is. I'll link that below so you can go watch it so you know what I'm talking about when I say shadow work, because there's a lot of different versions of shadow work floating around. But by definition, your shadow is unconscious. So it also makes sense that a lot of the ways that this shadow piece is impacting your current life are also unknown to you. So this is the area of inquiry that we're looking at things like, how am I being triggered? Like, how is this shadow piece causing me to be triggered in my life? How am I projecting it onto other people in my life? Because that happens a lot. It's things like, what limiting beliefs is this causing? How is it causing me to stay small? And also, very importantly, what authentic pieces of me are hiding in this shadow piece? Because, and I've talked about this before, both on my Instagram and here on YouTube, that your shadow isn't just filled with bad stuff about you. It's also hiding a lot of your most authentic pieces that for some reason in your life you were taught through, trauma, shame, programming, just societal conditioning, that authentic piece of you wasn't safe. And so that can be in your shadow as well. So we're not just looking at, in quotes, bad things. We're also looking at authentic pieces of you that it's time to reintegrate. So the next area of inquiry for our shadow work is really understanding where this shadow piece originated, where it began. Because again, our shadow stuff is unconscious to us, so we may not be fully aware of when this actually began for us. So for example, a lot of the shadow pieces I have to work on healing and integrating in my life, I project onto my husband, but they're not really coming from our marriage. That's not where they originate. They originate back in my childhood. And if I don't know that, it's really extra hard to heal and integrate and stop projecting on him because I'm not even aware of what I'm working with. So where it began is really understanding things like, where did this begin? How is your childhood impacting it? How is the collective shadow or your ancestral shadow or your past life shadows? How is all of that, or any one piece of it, impacting this shadow piece now? Because all of that, those are all different areas that we can find this shadow piece is originating in. So it could be originating in my childhood. It also could be originating actually with a parent or with a sibling or with anybody else in my life, and having watched them go through something, I then what is the word? Internalized it. That's the word I'm looking for. Shoved it into my shadow, these types of things. So where it began is really, really important to understand. So then the next area of inquiry is really understanding the shadow piece itself. So we've talked about where it began, how it's impacting you, these kinds of things. But we also need to actually understand the shadow piece itself. How is your inner child impacting it? How is shame impacting it? Where do the roots lie? What's underneath it? The thing about shadow work is that, and I think one of the reasons that I like it is because I'm always one of these people, is I'm always digging, okay, what's underneath that? Okay, what's underneath that? What's underneath that? There's always something underneath. So it's very much like excavation. We're excavating one layer to find out what's there, and then we're going to excavate that layer and find out what's underneath it, and then underneath the next layer. So we need to understand where those roots go. We need to understand the shadow piece itself, right? Now, the fifth area of inquiry, and this is perhaps the shortest piece because there's only one question on the question bank, and that is, how has this shadow piece served to protect you? Because the really important thing for us to understand about our shadow is that our shadow, our ego, our inner child, all of these things are just trying to keep us safe, okay? Your shadow is not evil or malicious or something that is trying to hold you back. It is trying to protect you. And the behaviors, the triggers, the patterns, the things we don't particularly like in our lives that we want to change, those are just ways that our shadow is trying to keep us safe and protect us from the things we've experienced in the past. Shadow work is not about getting rid of our shadow. It is about healing it and integrating it. And we can't do that if we can't learn to love it, right? So shadow work is not about obliterating something or shaming ourselves or hating pieces of us. It's actually about learning to love the pieces of us that are currently unloved and integrate that into our psyche and into our lives. And I think that in order for us to do that, we really have to understand that this is just trying to protect us. And once we understand how this coping mechanism or behavior or trigger stemming from this shadow piece has just served to protect us, it is so powerful. It's such a powerful way to bring empathy to that piece of us and to help release any shame we're carrying around the shadow piece, because shame is very often a huge playing factor in, right? Yeah, it's what, you know what I mean. It's a huge factor in whatever shadow piece we're trying to heal and integrate. So that leads us to the sixth area of inquiry, which is, how do we integrate this piece, the action steps that we can take, how can we support ourselves, how can we tune in with our body? It's really about integration and support, because we want action steps. We want to know, how do we integrate this piece? What do we need to do next? But just as importantly, we also need to know how to support our body. How can we tune into our body? How can we tune into our emotions? How can we call in support? What do we need to release? These types of things. That's sort of that sixth area of inquiry that we really want to look at when we're doing shadow work, whether that be meditation, journaling, or card work, or a combination thereof, which is generally how I do it, how I do shadow work. And I talked about that in the shadow work video, that I do think personally that meditation, working with our guides, journeying with our guides, is really where the bulk of shadow work happens. That is where we can get into that unconscious state, bring that shadow piece forward, and actually learn about it and understand it. And if we're doing that in a psycho-spiritual format like I do, we can form relationship with our guides so they can bring us to the pieces of our shadow that are ready for all of that healing. So let's talk about a couple different ways you can actually use card work to ask these questions to help you with your shadow work, and then we'll get into the spread. So first is to help with meditation. So I like to draw a card very often before my meditation, just as a heads up. What patterns am I going to be exploring? I have the Roots and Wings Oracle. You can do this with Oracle or Tarot, but this one's sitting right here. So let's do this first section here with Oracle. So I might shuffle my cards and say, okay, what area or patterns or themes am I going to be looking at in this shadow work session with my guides? And I pull, I think it says kindreds. So I immediately am thinking of family here. I'm going to be looking at family dynamics as I step into this, as we go through this meditation with my guides. We're going to be looking at family dynamics in some way. So this gives me kind of a heads up on that. And I can return to this afterwards for journaling, for more cards, and all that type of thing. Now, the next area, and this is something I really would normally do with a tarot deck. Let me grab a tarot deck. Okay, so I grabbed the Moonchild Tarot, the Shadow, I think it's the Shadow Work edition. I've been using this for my shadow work personally right now. So if I pulled this kindreds as sort of the theme that I'm going to be looking at, because you can do this with Tarot or Oracle, and you can use the spread I'm going to provide with Tarot or Oracle. I can also pull a card as a starting point for my meditation. So I can shuffle this deck, and let's say I pulled this Five of Pentacles. Now, I can absolutely combine Five of Pentacles with the Kindreds card to get my message to start with. But also what I can do is use this scene as a starting point for my meditation. So what I might do is, if it was me doing this, or if I was guiding you through this in a session, is I would go into my inner temple, meet with my guides, and then we would go through a doorway into this imagery. We would step right into this, this is like a hedge labyrinth type of a thing. And this would give me a starting point for that meditation. It would give my mind something to start with. And we can journey through here. We can talk to any character. There aren't any people in this card, but if there were, we could talk to that character. So this Four of Cups, for example, if we had pulled the Four of Cups instead, we could step into this imagery and talk to this person. So then, after I come out of my meditation, let's go back to Oracle just to keep it nice and, symmetrical here or something, right? Symmetrical, is that the word I'm looking for? Balanced? I don't know. Let's just go back to the Oracle so that it feels balanced to me. Once I come out of meditation, I could just ask my deck, okay, is there anything I need to understand further about what we just saw in that journey, what we just discussed, what the experiences we just had, whatever. And let's say I pull, okay, release. All right, so we went into meditation understanding we were going to look at family dynamics somehow. We started here in this garden, in this hedge, and coming out of meditation, I can say, okay, I'm looking at the release card, and perhaps there was something in this meditation that I do really need to fully release. That needs to be my key takeaway from this meditation about family dynamics. I really do need to release it. And this can be a key takeaway. It can be, what do I need to understand further? Something like that. And I'm also just now noticing, I really like how these two decks go together. These look really nice together. This is very, well, a lot of you probably know this is a new deck, so it's very new to my collection. I pre-ordered it. But I'm really enjoying these two decks together in this little demonstration. Okay, so that is one way that I can use Tarot and Oracle to assist in my shadow work meditation there. All right, so let's talk about the spread next. So this is a 6-card spread. there is one question or one spread position for each of those 6 areas of inquiry that we talked about earlier in this video. So spread position 1 is for the shadow piece. Spread position 2 is for understanding the impact. Spread position 3 is for understanding where it began. Spread position 4 is for understanding the shadow piece. Spread position 5 is for how this shadow piece has protected you. And spread position 6, is for understanding your next steps towards integration and support. The way that this PDF is set up is it has a 40 question question bank. They're divided into these areas of inquiry. So you can plug and play any question into any spread position to help it really work for whatever you're working on in whatever area of your life at any moment that you're doing shadow work. So it's a very plug and play sort of spread. For the duration of this shadow work and tarot series, I'm going to be using the following spread, and this is also in there. So it still has the same 6 areas of inquiry, but these are going to be the default questions I'm going to go to for the spread. So spread position 1, what shadow piece is ready to come to the surface? The second position will be, how is this shadow piece impacting my current life? The third position will be, what is at the root of this shadow piece? Position 4 is, what past influences are impacting this shadow piece? Position 5, how has this shadow piece protected me? And first position 6 for integration and support, what card is acting as an anchor or guide for me as I begin to navigate and integrate? So this is actually my favorite question to use as a general support. So let's go ahead and run through this card spread really quick with a super fast demo, because I don't want this video to get too long, and it's already getting pretty long. So let's do a really quick demonstration so I can give you a little bit more information, especially about that integration and support question. All right, so let's do a super quick sample read of this, because this video is getting very long and I have some wonky lighting, but we're going to do that anyway. So what is the shadow piece ready to come to the surface? So with the 3 of Cups here, my first thought is that sort of communal relationship aspect, that there's a wounding around friendships and community dynamics. So this makes me think very much of like a sisterhood type of a wound, which is something we are going to talk about in this series. So it's not necessarily just one-on-one friendships, but wounding within community. So how is this impacting my life? All right, so we have the 10 of Cups coming up. So this is not, this wounding, this shadow piece wound here, is not allowing me to really create that 10 of Cups, happy, loving experience that I'm looking for in my family and in my community at this time. Now, generally, I would go through this a lot slower, and I would probably do some journaling with each prompt as well, but we're trying to be quick here. What is at the root of this? So we have the Lovers. So there would be 2 ways to read this, 3 ways really, because we could read this as the root of this stemming from an actual relationship, that perhaps we had a relationship go bad and it has caused a wound here. We could also look at this as a relationship we witnessed as a child or at some other time go badly. We can also view this as the relationship with myself. Do I trust myself? And what wounds am I seeing in myself that I am projecting onto others that is preventing me from creating this emotional communal experience that I'm looking for? So what past influences are impacting this shadow piece? Ooh, so the 10 of Swords. So with the 10 of Swords coming up, there was definitely in this quick reading here some sort of painful situation, some sort of painful end here that really showed me and shoved into my unconscious that it isn't safe to have this relationship. Now, that doesn't mean that that is actually what happened, because remember, your shadow is unconscious. So let's pick a stream here, and let's go with this is a relationship that we witnessed. Say maybe this was our parents' relationship that we witnessed go badly here in the 10 of Swords. But maybe it didn't end the way we thought it did. Maybe we perceived what we perceived here. So it's not always about what happened. Sometimes it's about how we perceived what happened. But it has caused an inability to trust just people in general, which is really impacting the ability to sort of create what we're looking for. How has this protected me? So the 2 of Cups coming up here, it really has taught me that I can't get hurt if I don't trust other people in the first place, is sort of what's coming up for me right away. And then as a anchor or a guide, as I begin to navigate and integrate this shadow piece, is the Hanged Man. So this tells me that, in order to move through this wounding, I really am going to need to move into sort of that chrysalis experience where the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis and basically has to turn into a pile of goo before he comes out as a butterfly. And this experience here of looking at this wound is probably going to deconstruct what I currently have come to believe or understand about an experience in my past. And I need to allow myself to sit with that and allow myself to sit in that moment of unknown and this is very common, especially for myself, but I see this with others as well. As we begin to do shadow work and we start to pull something apart, it leaves us with this moment of, okay, if this isn't true, then what is true? And if I don't know what is true, that can be a very uncomfortable liminal space to sit in. And so the Hanged Man in this reading seems to be coming up for us as an anchor or a guide to help us remember that's okay. Sit in this piece of discomfort as we work through all of this. So this is just, again, a super, super fast demonstration. I would very much urge you to work through this spread far more slowly. Use journaling, use meditation, but really sit with it more than this super quick example. Okay, so that is that. This video is getting a little bit long, but those are some strategies that you can use for your card work, some areas of inquiry that you can use to bring to your deck, to create questions to bring to your deck or to your journal or to your meditations, as well as that 6-card spread that we're going to be using as we go through this series, so that I can, like I said, reference specific cards and how they might come up within a spread and reference specific positions and things like that. You can find this whole PDF. The link is below, totally for free on my website, if that is something that you think would be helpful to you. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video, and I hope that you are having a great day. Bye.